Hello, namaste. Welcome to my channel. Today I will be discussing the Hindu concept of God. What exactly do Hindus mean when they use the word God or when they use a word that gets translated to God? You might have heard Hindu people saying something like, I believe in God, I pray to God, I see God everywhere. You might have heard the phrase attaining God, God realization, God consciousness, Godhead. And this might be puzzling to you. You might be asking, what do they mean by God? Obviously, they don't mean the Christian God or the Jewish God here. Don't they have multiple gods? So the answer is yes, there are multiple gods. However, Hinduism is not strictly polytheistic and not strictly monotheistic. It's difficult to categorize because the theology is so multifaceted, which is what I'm going to explain or attempt to explain here. First off, I want to start by saying that Hinduism is a very diverse religion. In fact, it's so diverse that many people will say things like, it's not a religion, it's a family of religions. It's not a religion, it's a way of life. It's not a religion, it's a philosophy. It's not a religion, it's a culture. In my opinion, after studying it from the outside first as a non believer, and then studying it from the inside as a convert, I can safely say that it is all of those things. So, even though there are many points of difference, there is also common ground, which I'm going to explain here by outlining these conceptions of divinity and the core theological concepts that make Hinduism what it is. Now, let's get right into it. We have five Sanskrit words on the screen. They are Deva, Devi, male deity, female deity, Ishwara, the overlord, Purushottama, the supreme spirit being, and Brahman, the universal soul. Deva, Devi, Devata. These are all words referring to the Hindu deities. These deities are supernatural, superhuman beings. Most of them take a human or a humanoid form. Some of them take an animal or a half animal form. Some of them take the form of natural features, such as a river or a mountain. Devas and Devis are immortal. They have superhuman strength and abilities. They have mystical powers. They can make objects appear and disappear. They can create life. They can cause great destruction. They can shapeshift. And they can create new identities for themselves. Similar to the way the soul of a mortal being would reincarnate from one body to the next. The crucial difference between the body of a deva and the body of a mortal is that the body of a deva is less material, is actually more subtle, as we say. It is more ethereal than a mortal's body. Every being in creation is seen or thought of as a mix of spirit and matter, which we call in Sanskrit Purusha and Prakriti. So the devas have more Purusha than the Prakriti. They have a physical form, but is composed more of the spirit element than the material element, which is why they have the powers and abilities that they do. They are more spiritually evolved than the mortals, and that is why they are not bound to the same physical limitations that we are bound to on the material plane. The ability of the devas to multiply and change form is a curious feature of the Hindu religion. Because of this power, it is very difficult to decide just how many devas there actually are in the Hindu pantheon. This poses a challenge because there simply is no consensus on the number of devas that exist in Hinduism. Some people say, oh, there's really only one. Some people will say, oh, there's really only three. Some people will say there's five, there's 10, there's thousands. Some people say we have millions of gods. The reason for this confusion is due to the ambiguity of the Devas' identities because of their ability to change form. It's not solely a change of appearance. They take on a new name, they take on a new personality, and they are often tied to a specific location or a specific legend that their worship revolves around. So, if you want a succinct answer or a definitive answer on the number of gods in the Hindu pantheon, I'm sorry, but I simply cannot provide a number. I can't even provide an estimate because it's so subjective. What roles do these devas play? What is their relationship to the mortals? So while these devas have a considerable amount of freedom, they are not completely unbounded. In fact, they are bound by two important laws: the law of karma and the law of dharma. The law of karma is the law of action and reaction. The devas are not infallible, they are not perfect beings. They can make mistakes, they can be driven by their emotions, and for every action they take, whether good or bad, they will face the consequences of those actions. The law of karma is often thought of as a system of reward and punishment, and you can sum it up that way, but it is more nuanced than that. However, what I want to express now is just how powerful and how all encompassing the law of karma is, because it cannot be overridden, even by the devas. The law of karma is something that exists outside of their control. Moving on to the dharma or the duty. The word dharma can be translated to duty, obligation, righteousness, or even religion. But here we're talking about dharma as duty or obligation. These devas are obligated to perform certain functions. Many of them have a function that is related to nature. For example, Indra, he's the god of lightning and rain, Agni, the god of fire, Surya, the god of the sun, and so on. Some of them have a function that is much more general, such as Brahma, the god of creation, Vishnu, the god of preservation, and Shiva, the god of destruction. But here's where it gets more complicated. When you learn about these devas, simply in terms of their function, you come away with a very utilitarian and a very one dimensional understanding of them. And this kind of cold academic viewpoint is almost completely different from the way that practicing Hindus actually see them and how they develop relationships with them. A far more salient aspect of the Devas is their duty to the people on earth and their relationship to their devotees, which is very close and very warm. So even though these devas are higher than the mortals on a spiritual level, they're not seen as controlling the people or demanding to be worshipped or demanding offerings. Rather, they're seen in terms of being a parent or a mentor or a friend or even a lover, which I know is very strange in Western culture. Devas are always available to the people if they need help in times of crisis, if they need spiritual guidance, if they're calling out for help. There are many stories about devotees calling out for help and being rescued. If they're being tormented by evil people or they're being tormented by the demons, the devas will come down and intervene because that is a part of their dharma. It's part of their duty to protect the good people from the evil people and to vanquish the demons when they start wreaking havoc on the earth. The devas also function as spiritual advisors or spiritual mentors. So, again, even though the devas are higher than the people on earth, they're actually not interested in keeping them down. They're actually very much interested in helping them progress spiritually. So, there are many stories about devas appearing before devotees or appearing before spiritual seekers if they've been praying very intensely, if they've been meditating for extended periods of time, if they've been practicing austerities like fasting for a very long time, one of the gods will come to them and say, I've seen what you've been doing. I'm very impressed. I'm here to grant you a wish, or a boon, as they usually call it. They would say something like, ask me for anything and I'll make it happen. Usually, the type of gift the seeker would receive is some type of power, a special ability, like the kind of abilities that the gods have. They can only have one at a time, though. Women would ask for a suitable husband. Married couples would ask for a child, especially a gifted child. Devas will also appear to people in times of existential crisis. The most famous example of that is the Bhagavad Gita, which is Sanskrit for the Song of God. This is probably the most famous text of Hinduism, the one that's talked about the most. The word Bhagavan is one of the many Sanskrit words that can be translated to God or Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, a great warrior named Arjuna falls into a depression, and Shri Krishna comes to him, answers all of his questions. He explains reincarnation, he explains the nature of the soul, the purity and indestructible nature of the soul, the laws of karma and dharma, the different modes of spiritual practice, and metaphysical concepts like the three gunas or the three qualities of nature. After this long conversation, Arjuna becomes enlightened and is lifted out of his depression.